Welcome, Jet fans, to another episode of Jets Life Podcast. We're heading into Houston versus the Jets this week, and you know, here we are, 12 games into the season, going into our 13th game, and the drama and the storylines are abundantly surrounding this team. It's just negative story after negative story, one after another, and after all that, here we are on a Friday, and we have a game in 2 days. It's been a crazy week um, at One Jets Drive. It's just been absolutely, just belittling just how terrible this organization is running right now. And it's really just coming down the pike here. It's more and more as this season has progressed. It's pointing to the fact that you know we can't, as a fan base, trust this leadership anymore. Whether it's the owner, GM, coach, something is askew. Something is screwed up there. Um, you know, the whole Aaron Rodgers goes down, never finding a replacement, or somebody to come in and at least challenge Zach a little bit. We had Tim Boyle there. And the story has been said a million times over. To now, a story breaking this week that after Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian went in there and both had played terribly. A report came out from the Athletic. Zach Rosenblatt and Diana Racine both um, commented on the story that Zach had a reluctance to go back and play if he was asked to go back and play. That story was quickly refuted by Robert Saleh in a press conference later in that day, where he said that Zach Wilson went in there after the story broke and told him that that's not accurate. I want the ball. I want to play. It just how that story got out is the first question. I don't think that Zach or Diana, who have a pretty good reputation from they have a track record of not having issues with their storylines. I mean, it's not something they're not going for clickbait. It's there's some truth to the story. Where it came from, that's what we don't know. You know, did Zach tell Tim Boyle, I can't see myself going back in there. It's a mess. Did he tell Aaron Rodgers? I don't think Aaron Rodgers would be the answer there because unless it was overheard by another player who leaked it out to the press, somebody has leaked out this information. And simply, my opinion on this, if Zach has a reluctance to play, and that got to me as a head coach, my honest opinion on that is I wouldn't play him. Not simply for the fact of, does he not want to play for me? I mean, he's shown no reason for this coaching staff to continue to go with him outside the fact that everyone else on this roster sucks and nobody else on this roster is good enough to push him from the quarterback position, obviously, to push him for starting reps. The only reason he's playing is because every other option is just as bad or worse. Um, and in my opinion, all the options were worse. That is an issue with the GM and ownership of not bringing somebody else in here. That should have been done the day after Rodgers got injured. There should have been some sort of contingency plan in place. Leaving Zach Wilson by himself with Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian behind him was absolutely ridiculous. That was should never been the plan. Shouldn't have been the plan going into the season to have Zach Wilson be Rodgers' primary backup. The Jets needed somebody else back there, and if they really truly wanted Zach to be the backup, then it's still stupid to have Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian be his primary backups. Because what if Zach Wilson was having a good year and then he got injured? Then you are stuck. Obviously, teams don't have three quarterbacks, but when your primary quarterback gets injured so early in the season, you have enough time to go out there and get somebody else. Look at what the Vikings did with Josh Dobbs at the trade deadline. Kirk Cousins went down weeks into the season. I want to say it was like week 6, week 7, whenever it happened, just a little bit before the trade deadline. And the Vikings were aggressive. They were on a little bit of a winning streak. I believe at that point they were 4-3, same as the Jets. Um, and they were on a roll and saw that this team was turning that corner and went out there and got somebody else that can keep the boat afloat. Um, is Josh Dobbs better than Zach Wilson? Is he enough to kind of move the needle? It doesn't matter. He's somebody else who would challenge him and push him because that's probably where this whole thing got off to the wrong foot from the get go. The fact that this guy came in and I understand he showed highlights in college. I understand, he was universally praised. Um, the fact of the matter is, going into that draft, Trevor Lawrence was the 1A and everyone else was just a bunch of 1Bs. And, you know, I had opinion. I thought Justin Fields was the right guy. Um, you know, is he? I mean, obviously, outside of Trevor Lawrence, I thought Justin Fields should have been the pick there. Is he a world beater on his end? No, he's also struggling in Chicago, but at least he's doing something and showing something on film that you could say, "Wow, there's something there." Zach just does not do it. He's had maybe 3 games in his entire career, in his 3 years as a quarterback, that you can point at and say that you saw something there, but that's just simply not enough when you play 16, 17 games a year, now 17. It's just simply not enough to have one good game of highlight reel plays that you can look at. I mean, how long after the first season were we looking at the Tennessee Titans finger point touchdown to Corey Davis? I mean, yeah, it was a cool play. It was awesome. And at the time, you know, a come from behind win to beat a team that was a playoff team the prior year, it looked fantastic. And I was super pumped. And obviously I support every single player, and I still will support Zach. If he's playing well and he's doing well, I'll support the good playing. But I'm not going to be blind to the fact that we've seen 3 years of below average, absolutely terrible quarterback play that this front office completely ignored. And as a fan base, we're stuck in a situation where we're on Tankathon ranked to pick sixth in the draft right now in a year that we really had legitimate Super Bowl aspirations, legitimate Super Bowl goals going into the season. Injuries happened. I understand all that stuff. Fantastic. Um, but to take that much of a step back overall as a team and just completely ignoring the most important position on the field to the point where this storyline comes out and you really don't have a choice. Someone's got to take the fall for it. Um, the ironic part to what has transpired this week is the Tim Boyle announcement that he's been cut. It kind of, and I know after he got cut, Robert Saleh went to the podium and kind of said that they're open to bringing him back as a practice squad type of player. It's just kind of strange from the outside looking in, as we do as fans, to really kind of almost immediately, like after the story broke, the next day, Tim Boyle getting cut after he was your starter for 2 weeks, after he was on your roster since the day that Aaron Rodgers got injured, on your active game day roster since the day that Aaron Rodgers got injured. And so all of a sudden, after 2 games where he didn't play well, I mean, we can all agree to that, but also Trevor Simeon didn't look that great either. To go out there and cut him and then bring in yes, you're bringing another arm, I understand that, but it's just strange, overall. It really does kind of point a finger at Tim Boyle as potentially, being a source of that leak. I don't know if that's the case, but it's I mean, again, the fact that the team is doing something in this light to paint that picture is kind of more and more like of an issue here. The fact that we're now stuck here in kind of a where's the leak? Where's it coming from? Oh, Tim Boyle got cut after he was a starter for 2 weeks. He was good enough in your eyes to be on the roster the entire season. He was good enough in your eyes to be the backup quarterback after Zach Wilson got benched, and then start an extra game, after, or 2 games actually, after Zach Wilson got benched. Um, to all of a sudden being cut. Not we're gonna go back to Zach. Tim Boyle will be our backup. Um, not it just um I mean, they're even putting Brett Rippon as their quarterback. Like, there were options. Like, they could have done the same thing with Zach or with Tim Boyle that they did with Zach, delegating Tim to the third quarterback spot as your emergency guy, whatever, like they did with Zach the last couple of weeks. But he went from being the starting quarterback to cut to, if you really paint it, he's the fourth quarterback um after the Jets brought in Brett Rippon. Um, Really just a bad look, for this team to from, like, you know, it's not it's not gonna move the needle. I don't think that. It just looks aesthetically very bad. Um, Looks bad on for Tim Boyle. The treatment of the situation, it doesn't look right. Um, and then, to make matters a little worse here, As the storyline continues, there were reports um, of Saleh communicating with fans, former radio hosts, through text after the game. I think the storyline got a little bit more eyes than it really needed to, but it was a storyline. It was all over, so I'm going to talk about it. Saleh basically referencing in an interaction whether or not Zach Wilson should go back to being starting quarterback. This coming from the fan. Um, if you know the story, I think you're all aware. And Zach Wilson, sorry, Robert Saleh replying, "Zach back to quarterback? Are you kidding me?" That storyline got a little more buzz. It sounded like when it was presented to the audience that Saleh was like, "Are you kidding me? I can't go back to that guy." But I kind of, from the get go, my perspective of it was knowing the person that was being texted back and forth with and their reputation of constantly ranting against this team. Awesome guy. Does great work overall. Just he has a history of ranting against this organization, and rightfully so. There hasn't been much to speak positively about, even with everything that's going on right now. Yes, the positivity of the season ended 4 plays into the season. Um, it was over pretty much quickly before it even started. The negativity started from basically that point on. But yes, this guy has a history of going on rants. So from Salah's perspective, you've been telling me I got to bench this guy this whole season. Are you kidding me? Now you want me to go back to him? That's kind of the way I took it from the get go, and that was the way it that wasn't the way it was perceived by the person receiving the text, which is probably a little bit of something should go off in the top of Robert Saleh's head. Maybe I shouldn't be texting back and forth with fans. Maybe I shouldn't be texting back and forth with a fan that's vocal to the public. It just makes you look awful. Yes, if you wanna have, like, a friendly relationship with a fan, that's awesome. For that fan, it's awesome. Fan of the team, I wish Salah would text me back and forth. That would be awesome. But I also wouldn't expect him to, when somebody is as vocal as the individual is, to put something out there via text. If you're in a relationship, when you text something, if it's perceived the wrong way and the other way, you're gonna hear it when you get home. Um, and that happens all the time. You text, sometimes the words, if you're on Twitter, if you're on X, whatever you want to call it, if you're on Instagram, whatever, if you're replying to somebody through whatever means, through comments, that comment can be read in multiple different ways. If the comma's in the wrong spot, if punctuation, you learn this in grade school. If you know how a text is written isn't always the way it's heard on the other side of it, and that is exactly what happened here. Salah put himself in a situation texting with a fan about the situation of the team, about a particular player, and that got out there. With this whole storyline, it just looks all bad. Everything about the situation looks bad to the point where you know the storyline comes out, and I don't think there's much. I don't think you know I don't think it's a false story. There's some truth to it. Where it came from, where it started, how it's going, it could have been blown out of proportion. Like Zach may said, I don't know if I want to go in there. I don't know the context of whatever happened, but somewhere along the lines, it happened. Something happened. There's no. It's not just a story that was pulled out of thin air. Someone said something, and my familiarity. I'm not a reporter, so don't quote me on any of this. My familiarity is a reporter just doesn't report from hearing it from one person. It's not the way it works. It has to be like heard and confirmed through, in some cases, multiple sources. Unless that one source is a a top line primary source, then you can pretty much run away with it. But if it's just he said she said, a reporter isn't going to really report that. They're going to want to dig into it. They're going to want to get some additional details to make sure that whatever they are putting to press is factual and it is true. And I have no doubt in my mind that there is some truth to the story. Um, in no way, shape, or form did they kind of take this as a shot towards Zach. Did they say that he's kind of just quitting on the team? It wasn't meant in that aspect. It just it the the keynote here is the reluctance. the fact that he had doubts of him wanting to go back and play, for whatever reason. And let's be all honest here, he isn't in the position to really make that decision. Um, he's under contract. The Jets have given him every ounce of an opportunity to try and prove that he's anything worth being a quarterback in this league, and he's taken the opportunity, but has done absolutely nothing with it. In a team that's been built, and this is where the whole Robert Saleh, Joe Douglas thing gets a little iffy for me. These off the field things are a major problem, but from internally, I mean, this team has got good players built around it. The defense is top notch. You have skill players to work with. The offensive line is a mess, but a big reason to that mess is the fact that some top line players have been injured in and out of the lineup for multiple games. Um, AVT's been out since the Denver game. It's just it's not a complete offensive line. Um, but it's just got to keep getting retooled, and for Joe Douglas, that just doesn't look right. He came in here and he's a guy that's preached building this thing through the trenches. And for how many years he's used three premium draft picks on offensive linemen. He's used premium assets on offensive linemen. Look at Laken Tomlinson. Um, it, it's it's reached a point where when you know at some point you have to look at this. The defense, great. From what it was when he got here, when Joe Douglas got here, to where it is now, um, miles better than what it was. But then you look at the offense, is it that much better than when he got here, when Adam Gase was here? He has cool players. Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, awesome. He has good building block players on the offensive line. Joe Tippmann, um, Elijah Vera Tucker, Mekhi Becton, if he comes back, because don't forget he's now um, due to become an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year because it's his fourth. This is his fourth year, and the Jets opted to not um, go through the fifth-year option that they have on first-round picks, rightfully so. I mean, Mekhi has had injury history. Um, it didn't make the most sense to give him that fifth-year option. But with that being said, the way that Mekhi has played this year, I really do hope that the Jets explore that option of bringing him back. There's going to be a price tag to that, whatever that is. I mean, you got to kind of obviously gauge the risk reward there. But Makai's a good player to have here on the left side. This offensive line going to next year could be something special if you can get another offensive tackle in the first round. We'll talk more about the draft as things go on because let's be honest here. The playoff scenario for the Jets is pretty cut and dry. We're closer to the bottom than we are to the top, and it's looking like here we are in you know 13 games into the season. We got 5 games to go. Not looking like we're going to be ending that playoff drought that we had since the last time we made the AFC Championship game back in 2010. Looks like that's going to extend, which is kind of just crazy. At the last time that we were in the playoffs, we were a game away from the Super Bowl. We haven't sniffed the playoffs since. The closest we got was 2015. The Ryan Fitzpatrick year with Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker. And just the fact that we went from that offense to where we are today is just kind of crazy. Um, is this team just a quarterback away? I really hope so because things look really shaky after Aaron Rodgers leaves, however long he's going to be here for. Things don't look bright after that. We don't have another option at quarterback. The plan was for Zach to learn under Aaron Rodgers. I just cannot see a situation where um, Zach is on his team next year. I mean, maybe he's on his team next year as a third guy. I just they cannot do the same thing they did this year. I think if that happens, just fire everyone right before the season starts. If that's how things are going to go, they cannot make the same stupid mistakes year after year after year after year. It just at some point somebody's got to look at this guy and say, we've given him plenty of chances. It's just not it. Um, but yeah. So as I said, all this stuff kind of goes around, and believe it or not, there is a football game this week. The Jets do have a game against the Houston Texans, a team that picked a quarterback second overall with a rookie coach, with a rookie offensive coordinator. and it actually is seems like it's working for them. Um, guy for a defensive guy that came from San Francisco. If you really look at the two different worlds of what could have happened for the Jets, just look simply at Houston. They get a defensive coach who seems like a legitimate NFL football coach. I think when you look at Houston, I think they hit a home run with the head coach hire, and I think they hit a home run obviously with the quarterback. Um, I like CJ Stroud a lot coming out of college. I did not expect, and I don't think anybody did. I did not expect what we're seeing here. This guy is just beyond, and Houston's actually gotten lucky with this type of situation in multiple occurrences. And I wouldn't call it luck. Obviously, there's a process to it. But at the end of the day, picking a quarterback has a luck factor to it because there's a lot of unknowns with a guy coming out of college and how they're going to translate to the NFL game. But Houston's hit a home run at the quarterback position twice with Deshaun Watson a few years back, and they were able to get rid of him and his baggage after basically vetoing playing an entire year. Got rid of him and his baggage for premium assets, multiple first round picks. Um, in which in this draft they were able to use their own first round pick on CJ Stroud, and then use some of those assets that they got from the Deshaun Watson trade to trade up from, I think they had the 12th pick, to 3 to get Will Anderson. So really kind of building this team around the right way. I know Will Anderson started the season off a little slowly. He was a guy that, going into the season, a lot of praise in his direction. He was a guy that going into last year was the primary number one guy. Obviously, quarterbacks kind of you know impact that a little bit. Teams are always kind of looking for a quarterback at the top of the draft. In some cases, not the best option. But in Houston's case, there were two quarterbacks at the top of the draft. They got the right one. Plenty of time still for Carolina and Bryce Young, and obviously, um, you know, with the firing of their coach, the next coaching hire is going to be very critical. After you know, these quarterbacks don't get a lot of time anymore, as we can see with Zach Wilson. Um, at some point, you got to show something on film. To this point, Bryce Young just hasn't shown enough. But again, there's still plenty of time, and with a new coaching staff, um, I'd look for Carolina to be aggressive in the coaching hires. I think they would want to go somewhere. I mean, obviously, there's not a Doug Peterson in the world out there, but similar to what Jacksonville did, where after the catastrophe with Urban Meyer. They went out there and got a guy with a built reputation, Doug Peterson, former Super Bowl winner, somebody that had a history of working well with quarterbacks, and that's the kind of direction I would think that the Carolina Panthers will go. But I've been wrong before. It's reached a point even for our franchise where I do not want to see another defensive coach. If Robert Saleh does get fired at any point, whether it's the end of this year, end of next year, whenever that would be, the next coaching hire just simply has got to be an offensive minded guy. It's got to be somebody who knows. Um, you look at teams around the league, Miami, San Francisco, all these teams have Rams. All these teams have these like you know it's all about scheme for those teams. It's all about art, play art, and basically how they get these guys open. And for the Jets, it's just simply just not that. It I know the Jets don't have the skill players to get open outside of the few I mentioned earlier, Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall. Um, but there's got to be some sort of something happening from an offensive standpoint. Just simply isn't there. I know when you look at all 22, it does appear to be simply a just misread of the field. A lot of open guys being missed. But again, it just comes down to the quarterback position. But here's a game again. It's a team that going into the season didn't have much aspirations for, um, in a position to be playing for the playoffs, versus a team that's the complete opposite. A team with Super Bowl aspirations and now tanking. It basically seems like. Um, so, how do I think this game goes? I mean, the league shocks you week in and week out. It's not cut and dry. Nothing ever happens the way it's planned. But I just simply cannot see a situation where this team can outscore Houston. I know Houston's got some injuries at the receiver position. That's going to be a little bit of a transition for them for sure. But when you look at the field, when you go into games, it's usually best to look at the quarterback position first, and then the head coach second. And I think this is a situation where the Houston Texans have us beaten both those aspects. Does that result in a win for them? No. Players still got to go out there and play. But I unfortunately, I've been optimistic for as long as possible. But there really just simply is not enough to be optimistic about. Outside of this defense holding Houston to 0 points, I just don't see a situation where we can win. Maybe Zach comes out and he has a game similar to the Chiefs game. He's got a little fire lit under him because of being benched for the past 2.5 weeks. Maybe there's something there. I just don't. I, I gotta see it to believe it. It's reached that point. You know I'm just gonna stop. It's just gonna stop saying what's possible. I'm gonna stop saying this if this happens, whatever. The Jets defense, I have all the faith in the world. They can hold the Houston Texans to 17 points. They can hold them to 10. They can hold them to 14. They can hold them 13. Are the Jets going to score 13 points? Are the Jets going to score 17 points? Are they going to break 20 points? I just don't know that they can do that. They haven't shown it. They've had little bursts here throughout the year. Scored 31 points against Denver, thanks to a defensive touchdown. Still scored 24 points. I'm going to give them a little credit there. Um, They scored 22 points against Buffalo. Took overtime to do that. So in regulation, 16. Still beat them. Good win. Not going to gripe about a win. But there's been a lot of games this season where they just cannot reach 20 points. And it's just so sad in the year 2023 that we're having this conversation. A team with an elite defense that all you need to do is hit 20 points and you probably would have an outstanding record. And the fact that you just simply cannot do that on a weekly basis. The league average is 22 points. I understand there's gonna be bad games, gonna be good games. There are a lot more bad games for this offense than good games, and it's reached a point where how can you have any faith? Maybe Garrett Wilson catches a pass and he has some room to do something with it, and he can take it the distance. I mean, Breece Hall, same thing. We've seen it happen so many times. Him take a carry or take a catch, make a move, and he's gone. But these teams understand that now. They understand the only way this team is going to score on us is if we miss a tackle or if we don't cover Garrett Wilson with multiple bodies. If we can just play the Jets style of defense, keep everything in front of you, this team is not going to sustain a drive. They're going to make a penalty somewhere along the line, a holding call. They're going to false start somewhere. And when they false start, sec- first and 15 is like basically, basically punted at that point. It doesn't even make sense to run a play. That's basically been the history of this team, and unfortunately, um, it's a story that keeps going on and on. And here we are again, 5 games left in the season, and truly, as a fan base, we're in tank mode. I never root for a loss. That's not really been kind of my philosophy. I understand the benefits of a loss, especially when you sit in the standings where you are right now. I do understand. I'm foresight enough to understand that we shouldn't have won any games in 2020. Obviously, that those two wins have really set this franchise back, um, at least 4 years now. Um, and unfortunately, I understand this video may not kind of appease and bring a lot of light to any Jet fans, but there's not much to be optimistic about. Um, it's just a fan base that has continued to get stabbed in, just beat down by its leaders by just simply making bad decision after bad decision. Does that result in heads being cut and fired at the end of the season? Um, in my opinion, I don't think that's the case, but it's definitely a cause for alarm as we kind of progress into the future of this team. If you haven't I understand we're at the tail end of this video. Please take time to like and subscribe to my channel. And again, let's go Jets and let's hope for the best. 5 weeks left. Cross our fingers. It's not a complete catastrophe as the rest of the season goes. Thank you for listening and have a great day. Go Jets.